Nasha, Control Z for your database.
Hello, everyone. Am I audible at the back? Okay. So today I'll talk about how do we backup and restore our databases. So you can understand about Control Z, how can we Control Z to our databases, and that's okay. And to talk about myself, the pointer. Thanks. To talk about myself, I'm a senior software developer at Cohesity. Apart from that, I'm an OpenSearch ambassador, and I'm an AWS community builder. So I started my journey back in 2022 as a community evangelist, and that's pretty much how I started my journey through FOSS, free and open source software in India. And then we moved towards FOSS North. I was in Sweden and Denmark in May, April. So that was my first time in Europe, and I'm happy to be here again. And apart from that, I'm an innovator. I participate in a lot of hackathons. I started my journey in India-Africa Hackathon as a participant when I innovated my solutions. They also elected me as an evaluator in this year. So it's been a journey from the other side of the table as well. And apart from that, just you can see those photos, right? That's me at the Pulpit Rock hike in Norway. So I am an athlete by heart, where I start running marathons, playing basketball, football, and other kinds of sports. So I'm happy to run marathon with anybody who is interested, apart from just talking about tech. Also, these are some photos about me doing community contributions all over, starting in India, right from Pune, where I belong from, and then taking it up to Europe. That's OpenSearch conference in Amsterdam. So, and these were my fellow teammates in India-Africa hackathons. So that's about my whole journey until now, and that's how I like to introduce myself to Praise Me. So firstly, I would like to ask you all, like, why really backup matters, right? You may have acknowledged these factors of why backup matters, but we'll now switch the gears of if backup is taken, then will it really work, right? So let's understand why backup matters, and that's pretty much about the Murphy's Law, that data loss may happen anytime, right? So it may be a hardware failure, or it may be taking place in place of human errors, like doing RM minus RF of your Linux system, or also cloud outages, right? The AWS cloud outrage just 3 days back, the US East 1 region, that also took place, right? So these kinds of outrages are really going to take place, and these are just unpredictable, right? So we should be aware of data loss taking place, and we should form those strategies well before we should predict it, right? And backup is not really not a luxury, but an insurance. It just ensures that your data will be safe, but it really doesn't ensure that once you take a recovery or a restore, that will ensure that you are in the right space. So we will touch upon these things in the later slides. And there are two other key terms that I must touch here, which is recovery point objective and recovery time objective. So just to differentiate between these things, recovery point objective is basically how much data am I ready to lose. Like, let's consider I took a backup at 5, and I am restoring at 5:15. So 15 minutes of time is what I am ready to lose. So that's about how much data we can afford to lose. Basically, it should be 0, because nobody would love to really lose their transactions. That should be RPO. And the other is RTO, that is recovery time objective. How much time does it take for any system to recover. That's about recovery time objective. And that should really be as minimal as possible so that your system comes back and running. So these are some terms that I must touch in before getting started. And so when you realize your last backup was just 6 months ago, right? That's not an happy face at all. You are just not happy with losing so much amount of data. All the work that you put in for 6 months, you just lose it, right? That's not about how you afford the RPO to be. And that's about the Murphy's Law. If something can go wrong, it will go wrong, of course. So you must be sure of how will you recover if it goes down. That's about forming a backup strategies. Yeah. So I would like the audience to be interactive a little here. Like, when was the last time you tested restoring your backup? And are you confident that your restore will really work? How many of you say you're 100%, like even of your phone, right? You took your backup of your phone, maybe your iPhone or an Android phone. How many of you are 100% confident that, yeah, my backup would work and I will not lose any of my data? Let's say 100%. OK. Handful, 10 people. OK, 50% people say, OK, OK. And the last, we'll see when the disaster comes up. OK, that's me. I relate to you. But yeah, I must follow this. So this is one of the scenarios where GitLab really relied on the last option, which is when the disaster strikes in, then I will see whether my restore is working or not. They really didn't test whether their restore work or not. This is back in 2017 when some of the developers really mishap with their production backups, and they did RM-RF, which deleted their whole production database. And that really led to a big millions of dollars of losses. And that you can scan this QR to understand the whole report that was generated after the mishap took place. And this is not really what you expect. It took 18 hours to recover. That's not the RTO that anybody expects to be, right? And like the last words that any Windows system shows is, we are restoring from the backup, right? That's not a happy thing for anyone. So this was one of the tweets in 2017 back then when GitLab actually said that, yeah, we are restoring, there's a mishap, and we acknowledge, we'll be back. But 17 hours, that's really huge, right? So let's not go into that long RTOs. So we will discuss how Postgres can help in some backup strategies and restore capabilities that can help in quick restore as well as having quick backups. So when do you really test your backup? That was one big question for GitLab back then, because they tested their backups when the disaster hit them. And that's not really what it meant to be, right? So when do you really test your backup? Are you really testing it? Most of you really don't, right? Be it WhatsApp chats that we take our backup into, or our photos, or our Gmails, we really don't test it. And that's when we are not relying on to anything, right? That's like during the panic button when you really understand that, yeah, I lost my phone, I lost my data. Then you really come up with this, right? And that's not what it really matters. So OK. So few challenges these days. I like to put my talk into why, then discussing some challenges, and then once we have the problem, then we know how the solution is going to cater that problem. So discussing few challenges here, we have backups. All of us just turn on that toggle up, but we don't really test our backups. Are they really up to date? Are their backups really backups? How do we test it? So we will follow some strategies of how can we test it. Secondly would be rising the data volumes. We tend to keep a lot of data together. That's really not important. We do not customize our data, as well as the kind of applications these days are so microservices and also all the cluster-based systems that's creating a lot of complex architectures. Such kind of architectures really make it difficult for databases to take long backups, as well as if there are longer backups, the file size is too heavy, right? So these are some of the challenges that really need to be catered well before when we take up into account. And there are, of course, human errors, like the GitLab faced in 2017. Okay. Yeah. So the drop table, right? I wish I could have Control Z when I did the drop table command. So whenever we have this Control Z command, how can we optimize with that? We will walk through these. Some wrong schema changes that a developer does. All these kinds of cron jobs that misconfigurations are done. All these kinds of human errors really impact the databases at production level as well as staging. And most important thing, many developers don't understand that the cloud snapshots are really not full backups. They are just there. I mean, you can't rely completely on the cloud snapshots, because if the US East 1 region goes down or any other region goes down, it is a third-party provider that you're relying on to, right? After all, you should have a strategy which will surround your own dependency, and then if something doesn't go well, then you rely on a cloud provider. So that's really not what anybody recommends it to be. And you should need, there is some rule, 3-2-1 rule. We will discuss that. Even that will solve this problem at the surface. And the last but not the least, security and compliance. So all the data that you take up, it should be in the encrypted format. Most of the backup data that we take, it's really not encrypted. And that leads to a lot of mishaps. And also, many of the hackers get those data, and it's accessible to any of the users. So you need to have the fine control access control layers policies to be determining which data needs to be accessed by which user. And there needs to be all the regulations designed by various communities and encryption at rest as well as transit. So these are some of the challenges these days that all the developers and all the big giant companies are facing. So let's understand, let's have a quick check of what our audience thinks, that what is their backup strategy to come up with. I would like all of you to really participate in this so that we get a good amount of poll and understand how my audience really looks like, right? Can we scan this? Even I'll scan it so that I can understand if it's working. I hope it works, right? Just put the results. OK, so the question is, what's your current Postgres backup strategy? Do you trust the gods? Do you have pgdump and your phrase to come up that, yeah, my backup will work? Or do you have your daily cron jobs? OK, war archiving like a pro. Most of them rely on gods. OK. 15% are on praise. OK. %. OK. I'll end this. 63. Last a minute. OK, 19%. OK. pgdump. OK, we're good. So most of you think that you rely on cloud backups as well as other things that can help you really cater to all the backup strategies. So let me just walk you through few basic steps. We'll take some baby steps to understand what kind of backups we can take, and then we can select what backup strategy needs to be formed. So firstly, there are two kinds of backups, basically, a logical backup and a physical backup. And these are two backup universes that come up together. And how can we make this work together so that a backup strategy comes in? So a logical backup is the one which is human-readable format. It comes up when you take a logical backup, and when you see the file, so you can see the command here. It's like pgdump, and you dump your database into a file. And when you read this file, you can see it's a human-readable format file, actually. So you can see all the SQL commands directly into this file, like select star from table 1, and then all those kinds of where clauses. So you directly can read this file. This is like a direct file, which is human readable. And this has all the data that is extracted from the SQL query at the runtime. And when you kind of want to restore, what you typically do is you take this file and you give the format, and also you can specify the database in which you want to restore. That's a basic, simple backup that Postgres has supported from long back, right? That's pgdump. But when it comes to such kind of logical backups, the major thing that I feel is a problem here is you get a file, right? So this file could be very, very large, very, very bulky when your actual database is having clusters as well as microservices, as well as it's a distributed kind of architecture, right? So you can't really depend on, sorry. So you can't really depend on this file, because this file has some size limits as well, right? So when you kind of restore, it will not be a complete restore. So that's one of the big disadvantage here. And it's very slow for larger databases, because writing to a file with consequent SQL commands that get run on the runtime, right? So you say select star, and there would be hundreds and thousands of these commands that will be getting executed every now and then, right? So this is very slow for larger databases, and it obviously does not include any kind of point-in-time recovery, that is the WALF file, right? Like write-ahead logs. It does not include any of that sort. So it's not really having the transactional logs, so you can just take a file, and once you restore it, it is a full backup restore. It is not an incremental restore that you get. So it doesn't have a point-in-time recovery. This is a disadvantage here, because you can't really get a file with the valve, right? Like a write-ahead logs. And also this ensures that your file should have all the permissions. So if you execute this command you execute as some of the user, right? Like a Sakshi, like I am the user who executes this. So this file will be getting executed as my user. If I do not have access to production database, then I will not have those production databases back up into this file. So you need to ensure that you have root privileges to actually make this work. So as a developer, you may not have access to productions, right? You may not have access to the staging deployments. You may have access to the dev or QA account, right? So that really makes it boils down to the point where you can't rely on a third person to take a backup, right? And the key advantages here are it's very portable, because this file, it's not dependent on any version or any operating system. So you can take this file, and you can quickly go to another version of Postgres or a backward compatible version of Postgres and restore it there. Or also you can take a different operating system like Solaris to Linux, or maybe Mac, like other kinds of architectures, right? Or x86, like those things. So it's really compatible with another version as well as another server. So that's really portable. But after all, everything boils down to these kinds of caveats that come in, right? And that brings us to the other part, that is a physical backup. A physical backup is really, you are taking the actual database files that are getting backed up. You do not actually get, it's in the binary format, so you can't really read those files, and it's not executing runtime. So it's really fast because it doesn't have any SQL commands. It's just taking the binary format and it's backing those up. And with this binary format, it also takes into account the write-ahead logs. So you get the transactional logs as well. It really keeps a copy of the data directory. That's about this. And how can we really take this? There are two ways to take this. Firstly is you stop your Postgres server. Then you go to the main directory where you want the backup to be taken. And you specify where you want to take the backup in. So you specify the directory. And then when you start the Postgres, you already have a backup of your Postgres already in that state, which was here. And another command that really helps you take a backup is pg-base backup. It's an online backup, so you can specify which is your data directory where you want to take the backup into. And you can also specify replicas and what kind of format you want, like a zip file, jar file, or any of that sort. So these are some kinds of ways that you take backup into. The key advantage here, of course, is it's faster because you do not have runtime queries into these files. It's just copying the entire data directory. So you really don't get the latency issue here. And it's exact copy of your database. It's not depending on any of the previous data. It's at that particular point what you have. So it really also supports point-in-time recovery. We will understand what are point-in-recovery backups. And the key disadvantages, of course, it's a balance between a logical backup and a physical backup. You really don't can run, like if I have taken a backup into, let's consider this folder here, I really can't take this folder and go to a different version of Postgres and run there. I mean, restore there. Because this would have the file format to be in the data directory, the format that I took up into. So it's really dependent on the version. It's really dependent on the environment or the infrastructure that I'm coming up with. So this is really not portable. It must be restored on the same version with the same OS that I took the backup into. And it's very, I mean, it's larger files, so it includes everything. Like, it's really large. If you try to see it, it's in the binary format, but it's really large. But it's large because it has the output of it. It's not that small compared to the logical backup. And it's more complex restore steps because it has write-ahead logs. So when you try to take a point-in-time recovery, you get those point-in-time recovery transactions as well. So these are two kinds of backup universes that we have, logical and physical. Now we can understand how we can take these two together to form a resilient environment, which is data like disaster recoverable, right? So how these two take up? Let's take a scenario here. Let's consider you are a database administrator, and you have a big online shopping website, okay? And you want to make sure that you do not lose any of your data, be it any of your human errors take place, or a disaster comes up, or there is a cloud outage there, right? So any of that sort, you have to make sure that you as a database administrator have to take in these things up, right? So what do you really do? You form a strategy. What is that strategy? You really take mixture of both of these type of backups, firstly being a logical backup, and secondly being a physical backup. So logical backup, as we already understood, it's a dumping of your whole database, right? So you take, like, you set up a schedule, like an automatic schedule, which is once a week. Let's consider on a Saturday, I take a full backup. A full backup as in a full logical backup. Logical backup having a larger file, and it takes a lot of time to take this backup, right? Because it has SQL queries. So you take this backup, and this contains all the SQL queries, right? Because this backup is really you can go to a different version and you can restore it, so you are making it disaster recoverable, right? So the purpose is, if you upgrade to a newer version next week, right, you can take this full backup taken on a Sunday or a Saturday, and you can restore it completely. So that is when you upgrade to a newer version, you can take this logical backup, right? And if you move to a new server, if you want to recover only a specific table or a specific schema or a specific table space, you can take this logical backup and restore it completely, because this has a full copy of your data, right? And this will take a lot of time. So that is the reason that I'm running it only on a Sunday or a Saturday where the traffic is not that much, right, on the online website. And the second one being, so this is a weekly one, right? The schedule that I set is a weekly one. And the second one being a physical backup. In the physical backup, what I really do is I take a snapshot. I make a configuration into my cron job where I just say, I need a physical backup every night. So every night at 2 p.m., when the traffic is a little low, I take up incremental backups. So this will really have the physical backups into place, and it will have a complete copy of your database with the write-ahead logs, that is WAL logs. And why this complements this is this purpose. If the database get crashed on the very next day, right? Let's consider this was Monday, and I have a Sunday backup, right? But I want the Monday's data as well. So on a Tuesday, let's consider I have a crash. So on a Tuesday, I can't really afford to lose my Monday data as well, right? So what I will do is I will combine my physical backup and a logical backup. A logical backup will have all the data until Sunday, and also a physical backup, which will have the data of the Monday, right? So that's about having a complete copy of your database. And this has a write-ahead log, so that is the reason I'm able to take up a direct Monday's backup also into place. So this is exactly what happens in a point-in-time recovery when you want just-in-time recovery to take place. So I run a job which takes in together a weekly backup which runs on a Sunday, every Sunday. And this is a physical backup which is really quick because it doesn't have really much to do. Not all the SQL queries come in this kind of physical backup. So I take up this job as daily job. So this is how logical and physical backup come and go hand in hand when you really want to have a data resilient kind of architecture to recover from any kind of disasters, right? So this is how anybody from a database administrator point of view will really create such kind of scenarios. So just going a little deeper with full and incremental backups. So we should not always start from scratch, right? If there is anything, we should not reinvent the wheel. So that's what really goes in together. The firstly being full meaning complete copy of it. And that was when you take a logical backup, really, because you take the full entire thing. And physical backup has write-ahead logs, which is actually just an incremental backup if we take it. So this is just having the changes that were done after a full backup or a previous incremental backup. So that's a full backup, and full backup can be taken in two ways. One is having a PG base backup, which is already supported, and PG dump, which we already discussed. It has few disadvantages, but yes, these both are supported. And incremental backups is actually store only the changes since the last full backup or the full incremental that I took place. So that's incremental backup. But there are trade-offs between these two, being performance or speed, let's consider. So if you take a full backup, it's taking a full copy, right? So it will take a lot of time, simple, right? So that speed is low, right? Speed is really less in case of full backup. But in case of incremental backup, if we take, it's really going to be fast, right? Because it's just taking the changes that we did from the previous backup or the previous incremental backup. So it will be really fast. So that's between the speed. But complexity in terms of restore. When we try to restore a full backup, it's really easy to restore because we really don't have to deal with write-ahead logs and combine it with the full copy, right? Like if we consider incremental backups really have just the changes from the previous full backup. So we have to combine a full backup with an incremental to really restore it. So it's really a little complex. And with microservices and Kubernetes kind of architecture, it really gets a little more difficult because the environments are really huge and heavy. So this is when we have to trade off between speed versus complexities. And Postgres 17, which was launched on 26th of September 2024, when I actually submitted my talk that time, it was having the support for incremental. So when you have PG base backup, that is PG base backup with full. But when you specify this dash dash incremental parameter, it actually supports incremental backup. So this is actually supported from Postgres 17. And also there is an helper tool called as combine backup. So with combine backup, you can rebuild your previous full backup from the incremental layers that you have taken. So every week, I am taking a full backup, but daily I'm taking an incremental backup. So with the incremental parts, I can really build up a full backup. That's basically the combine backup option. So the use case that we see is, which I already discussed, weekly you schedule a job, which is having, let's consider a Sunday or a Saturday, to have a full backup. And daily you set up an alarm or a cron job, which says you take up only incremental backups, right? So this will really combine all your write-ahead logs as well as all your PTR capabilities coming into place so that your recovery to time objective as well as recovery point objective are really less. So that's about how we build up a resilient architecture with these kinds of strategies. This is write-ahead logging, so just keeping a base of what WAL is. So it's actually a black box, to be really truthful to you. You may not know it, but actually, if you use Postgres every day, this comes up by default. So this is really coming up by default. Even if you know it or you don't know it, every change that you're doing, everything like select, where clause, everything that you do, everything gets logged up. And that's write-ahead logging default behavior into your Postgres. So every time you do anything, it just comes into this directory called as the PG underscore vault subdirectory of the cluster's data directory that you have set in. And it really is a boon, I must say. Like whenever we had some crashes or any kind of disaster kind of scenario or mishaps in our productions, we really were thankful to this feature here. It really helped us in quickly recovering it. So this is actually what the control Z factor here is. So when any of the user actually does really drop table users or drop any of the table, I wish this control Z was there, and I'm happy that database says we do not have the shortcut of control Z going back, but the WAL feature here really helps you a lot. And this is actually an interesting factor. It's already there. You may not know it, but your database is writing mini backups every second. Every second you really execute the command, the log file really gets updated every second. So that's really how the boxes and the files go from the conveyor belt where everything gets written into it, right? So you are continuously getting backed up with a mini backup in your Postgres everywhere. So maybe if you want to give a read of how this works, you can scan it and get more information about it. But this is really interesting to know that you may not be aware, but yeah, you already have backups into your like files. So just a quick check if you are awake. Can you just scan this QR? I will just start this. So maybe a quick check will help me know my audience. Yeah. I hope everybody is awake. I guess the number was 67 or 69 when we did the first QR scan, so I hope we turn out to that number. So I see people are awake. Sorry? How you define a crash? Okay, it could be some human error that may have taken place while you are not aware, like RM minus RF, or maybe an outrage in your actual region where you want to take the restore from. So that could be one of the reasons, right? It could be anything. You can assume a human error, maybe. Let's see the results, how funny that looks like. Recover from backup I took. Okay, panic here, restart it. Take some vacation, let my colleagues figure out. Okay. I log out. Okay. Drink beer, I'm on vacation. Cool. Resign my job. Okay. Take a nap. Is there Control Z or somewhere where I could really restore? Order a beer. Give notice. Notice to whom? Okay. Wait until Monday. Why? Monday, what's on Monday, right? Okay, PTR up till transaction, start it. What? What to start? Like, this is very ambiguous. Fail over. Restore using the playbook. Okay, restore from our somehow. Okay, Ansible playbook. Okay, that's cool. I will just stop this because I see 2 participants are typing. Last a minute to go. 1 participant typing. Pray. Okay. Let's end this so that I can start. So I'm happy. 63 people really voted. So yeah, everybody is awake. And let's really dig a little deeper now into how do we really recover, restore, and recovery. Like, most of the people really don't understand the difference between restoring and recovering. They really get confused, like many people don't understand authentication and authorization. So this is similar, restore and recovery. Let's really dig deeper into what really restore is and what recovery is. So maybe to what I can relate mostly is when my nephew plays around with my phone, right? He tries to unlock my phone, right? When he tries to unlock my phone with different kinds of passwords, it gets logged, right? And I can't really, if I also don't remember it, and if it's really not getting like, I'm not able to unlock my phone, I only see an option called forgot password or recover, right? That's what I see. That's really in the recovery mode. My phone really goes in the recovery mode, and that really is the recovery mode that we talk about. So recovery is like you get back into a working state, but you don't understand whether this working state was my really previous state or not. It could be a working state which makes you really get into the environment, but that will not make sure that what you lost is really recoverable or not. So that's really recoverable, that you recover, like you are recovering from your health, right? But when you restore your health, you're also doing some therapies to recover as well as restore your health into a normal state that you may have lost. So that's about how restore may work. And after fixing my phone, like after I have really got my password and unlocked my phone, that's when I really take the restore from my backup, like taking up my contacts, taking up my photos, taking up my messages, all those kinds of things. So that is actually what restore means. So I hope now if anybody asks what's the difference between recovery and restore, I hope many of you can really explain them, right? So that's about restoring and recovering. And so this is one kind of point-in-time recovery that we have in terms of Postgres. This is actually time traveling, to be really fantasizing this. It's actually combining a base backup with your continuous archiving that is taking place, that is the write-ahead logs that we just took place, right? It is taking every transaction, so a full backup with all of the transactions that you have, you really combine them and you make it work. So that's really how you have a continuous archiving turn on. And this is restoring the database to a specific point in time. Like you specify the time, and you really get restored to that particular time itself. And this is actually a little tricky, to be sure, to be really frank with you. Like when I try to restore to a particular point, let's consider I did so many incremental backups, so many of them that I really don't understand or really don't recall which state was I when I took this kind of point-in-time backup, right, or an incremental backup. So you kind of really do trial and error, right? That let's take an restore to this incremental backup, and then let's see the state. So you kind of go to and fro, right? And when you go this to and fro kind of infrastructural changes, your database goes into a very weird state where your write-ahead logs get overwritten. And in this state, you really don't afford to lose any of your like overridden logs. You really want to restore your write-ahead logs. This is where timelines come in, right? I have not covered this here, but this is where timeline feature of Postgres really helps, where whenever you kind of restore it, it always maintains a timeline there. Whenever you have a timeline, it will not allow you to override your write-ahead logs. So this is where your write-ahead logs will really not be mishapped, and your configurations will work in time. And steps of how can we configure a continuous archival. Firstly, you enable your WAL archiving in your config file. That is, you specify the archiving mode as on, and you also specify the file path and the command for it. Once you have it on, then you just take a simple base backup. So this command really works seamlessly, but it just works with archiving when you have this on, okay? And this is recovery to point in time. So you specify the time, and you kind of recover it to that particular point in time. So you restore it into a time where you really want your backup to be in place. So this is about how you continuously back up your state. Just gonna take few notes here, and then maybe I'll be open for Q&A. So yeah, the two things that we really want to focus is PG dump, which most people really understand is they can really do a point in time using PG dump. PG dump is really having just a full copy of your backup with no write-ahead logs. If you really don't have write-ahead logs, how will you recover point in time? How will you really do point-in-time recovery? Because write-ahead logs will have the timelines as well. So it's a note here in the Postgres documentation specifically that you really can't do point-in-time recoveries through pgdump or pgdumpall. You have to specify -- incremental option to take an incremental backup and then do a point-in-time recovery. These are some of the caveats. You may, I'm running a little short of time, so we may cover it a little later. Or if you need more information, maybe you can take a snap of it. Also, the slides will be available post the conference, so this may also help you. Just touching bases on what's new in 17 and then what's new in 18. So 17 got launched in 26th of September 2024. And it really was a phenomenal change because it supported incremental backups, as I already discussed. It has this incremental option. It also has a combined backup option where you combine all your smaller incremental backup into a chunk of full backup. So that's really a new baseline that you set up, and it's really amazing when you really have a larger database and a complex database. So, and these two commands are performing really well. And if you take up this dump, PG dump with a filter, you get this filter option when you really want to selectively take a backup, selectively of the table space, the schema, or a specific table. So this filter option was also introduced in 17. Apart from that, all these features that got introduced in 17 really helped in performance because the restore checksum was really fast. Also, there was parallelism improvement because you had the incremental backups. So that was really parallelism getting improved. And security was also improved in 17 because there was base backup that were client-side encrypted. So encryption, when you take a backup, as we already discussed, you have to take security into consideration with compliance. So that's how you really take up security into consideration. So making PI, like point-in-time recovery as well as cloud storage backup was far more efficient from 17 onwards. But the backup admins were still waiting, right? They were still not happy with when the restore happens, they were still waiting, like, when will the restore be complete? Like, when will the point in time be done, right? So in 18, that's September 25, 2025, what got introduced was this resume parameter here, where if a backup was failed, you can resume it from where it failed. So this was really a big change in the Postgres 18 features. Also, there was many improvements on monitoring, as well as the statistical data, the write-ahead logs, stats that took place, all of these kinds of checksums, as well as the corruption of data, if there was any data that got corrupted. So all of these changes really made Postgres 18 really a stable version, as well as performant. So backups are really just not having copies. They are not like a luxury. They are an insurance. They are about having recoverable, resilient, and redundant copies, right? That's what backup really means. You have to take out time to really restore it and test it. So I hope, yeah, just the 3-2-1 strategy I would like to cover. That's pretty much about my talk. So the 3-2-1 strategy is having 3 copies and 2 of different types in 2 different medias, and 1 always have a copy in a different location so that you can recover it from the location if there is a outrage in any of your region. So this is the backup strategy that we really had. I would just, yeah, maybe you can take a snap. We don't have time for another happy moment here, but I wish I could have that, but it's OK. These are some references that you can really refer to. This has 17 and 18 documentations that what new features were delivered and how performant it was. Maybe you can give it a read. And last, Postgres mascot is an elephant in itself, as we know. Like, the main feature of an elephant is it never forgets. It's very intelligent. So it's just how Postgres should work like. So if you want Control-Z to work, you have to take up backups, right? So that's what the real glitch of the thing is, right? Just, yeah. I would love to have feedback from you all so that I can improve on my talk, as well as if there are any things that you find it interesting in my presentation. I would love to have feedback. So please give a few minutes to give me a feedback on my talk. I am running a little short on time, so I may not take up Q&A, but I'm always available post this talk, maybe outside. So I would love to hear from you any questions and take up anything that really interests you. And that's my LinkedIn, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn. We can really talk about any cool stuff on open source. Yeah, thank you.